Excellent. Thank you so much. I want to start off this evening with a land acknowledgement. We want to acknowledge that we gather on the traditional land of the Kumeyaay peoples, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who stewarded it throughout the generations. My name is Aaron Bullard, and I am a board member of Choral Consortium San Diego. We are a service organization composed of choruses and individuals who support the choral art form throughout San Diego County and the Tijuana region. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. So if you are able to and want to support programs like this and future collaborations and the general choral art form in San Diego, please go ahead and make a donation. The link will be in the chat in Zoom, as well as the link on the YouTube channel if you're watching this later. We are having two amazing conductors here tonight. I'm going to have them go ahead and introduce themselves. Let's start with Keith, if you could give us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll have John.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see names and faces of some choral musicians I'm starting to see a little more frequently these days, and others I haven't seen for a while. And I'm very happy to share this tonight with John, my colleague. I'm Keith Pedersen. I have two roles in the choral community. I'm one of the choir directors on faculty at Point Loma Nazarene University, where I have a chamber choir, and also direct the choral union, which does larger choir orchestral masterworks. And then on the weekend, I keep myself busy with my friends at La Jolla Presbyterian Church, where I've been the director of choral ministries for over 20 years now. And again, my name is Keith Pedersen, and my pronouns are him and his. He and him.
All right, and John.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all here on the flat screen, as we've kind of gotten used to seeing everybody in 3D again. Thank goodness. It's kind of this is a nice format for this kind of conversation, so I'm glad to be here. I also have two roles in the community in choral music. The first is as the director of choral studies at Palomar College in San Marcos, where I direct the chamber singers and the Palomar Chorale, which are both kind of similar styles as Keith was just describing. The chorale focuses more on masterworks with our symphony orchestra when we can collaborate. And I'm also the music director of the San Diego Master Chorale. So that amazingly is now, I'm in my 7th season. I think it's 7. It's the same, whatever season it is, it's how old my son is. So he's 7, that's the 7th year, which seems impossible, but and where we perform a season of a variety of concerts and educational performance events, and then we collaborate with a symphony orchestra, most recently the San Diego Symphony and other regional orchestras and choruses we do collaborations with.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and take my video off, so it's just the two of you on screen. And I will drop the first question in the chat that John will ask first, as he is the most recent birthday coming up.
Fabulous. Keith, what is your favorite meal to prepare at home?
Oh, my favorite meal to prepare at home is probably nacho salad. Nacho salad. I'm being born and raised in Canada. I didn't know a lot about Mexican food until I married a woman from Phoenix, Arizona. And she came to Canada and taught me about the joys of refried beans and other spicy, a little more spicy Mexican food. And now it's Mexican food is probably my favorite. And I like taco salad because it's pretty easy to make, and even I can't ruin it.
I think it was. I'm going to answer this next, but I'm going to just say something about your answer, because nachos are a meal here in this house.
Yeah.
Not weekly, but over the last couple of years, it was my sister-in-law who gave us permission. She says, you can. Sometimes we just make nachos for dinner, and we were like, what? Yes, this is the best idea. So,
love it. What is your favorite meal, John?
So mine, I think, is cooking something on the grill, probably red meats on the grill. And I always I always appreciate the fact that I'm cooking outside at all times of day and all times of the year. Being from Michigan, I would never have cooked bacon in the early morning hours in February, but here I do it all the time.
Absolutely.
So I would say that it's probably grilling something.
Do you have a special spice or seasoning you like to use?
Yeah, yes, it's very secret. Lowry's seasoned salt.
There we go.
In large portions. Trust me, it's like yeah, it's good.
Awesome. Whereabouts in Michigan are you from?
Kalamazoo.
Yeah. And I think it probably gets colder there than it did in my part of Canada, right in the middle of the continent as it is.
And are you Ontario? Where were you?
I was born in Alberta. Just
okay.
North of Montana and on the prairies just east of the Canadian Rockies. But it's a dry cold there. We don't have the humidity. Of course, -40 is -40. It doesn't matter what the humidity
I can't comprehend that.
Yeah, but and of course, probably like you too. I'm not sure what it was like for you, but when I was growing up, we never canceled school for anything because if you canceled school every time it got cold, we just never stopped going to school.
Right.
So -40, and we were expected to show up as students, and we were expected to show up as teachers as well. Those were the good old days.
-40. My son would be fascinated with -40.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So I'm going to ask you, John, a question.
Okay.
What are you reading right now?
So I read this. I prepared a little for this because I glanced at the questions a little bit. So it's I'll answer truthfully. What I'm reading now is this guidebook to the Grand Canyon because we're planning a trip. We're planning an escape from San Diego during part of the spring break week we have coming up because my spring break amazingly aligns with with Parker's. So this is this wonderful field guide for the Grand Canyon by a publishing company called Wild Sam. And this is a great book. They're beautiful guidebooks, and you can't find them on a PDF or download. You have to buy the actual book, which is like made out of paper, and it has places for you to write in, and it's very analog.
Very tactile.
But I'm also reading this James Ellroy novel called Perfidia, and the funny thing about that is I've been reading it. It was published, I was just checking, I think in 2014. So that's about how long I've been trying to read that book, and I'll read some of it or I'll listen to some of it. And as a busy person, I'm sure you understand it's hard to find time to like actually do that kind of thing. But in the evening, if I'm in bed and I'll listen to a chapter or something, I'm sometimes too lazy to even read it officially.
No, I hear you. Let me just see.
And then you answer now. Let's see. What are you reading right now, Keith?
Well, I'm in the middle of a 6-year reading project because way back in the 1980s when I first got married, my father-in-law, who was an American serviceman who served in the Second World War in France and Germany and Italy, he knew that I had a fascination with the Second World War, so he and his wife bought me a big, thick volume that was based on the progression of the Second World War, something that happens every day in the war.
Wow.
So there's a little paragraph from just about every day throughout the 6 years of 1939 till 1945, a little before and a little after that. So in the fall of 2019, I guess that's 80 years after the start of the Second World War, I thought I would read it through one day at a time over the 6 years. I've read it through several times and looked at it many times since then, but I just thought I would go through it again just to get a sense of the war over 6 years as it was experienced by the people who were actually there. And of course, right now, these names that I'm reading are very familiar to us in the news that we've been reading out of the Ukraine over the last 4 or 5 days.
That's crazy. So this is a novel, the James Ellroy novel, but it's called Perfidia, and it takes place It's based in Los Angeles, and it takes place over these dates. Can I quickly find that? December 6, 1941 to I think December 28, 1941. So it's just before, during, and after the attack on Pearl Harbor and all the machinations of fear and blackouts and all the things that were happening right here in Southern California or in Los Angeles. It's a novel, but there are some historic names in there. So that's interesting that we both kind of landed on a really similar topic as our reading. That's really
reading
cool.
of choice, right?
Yeah. So I have the next question. John asks, who or what inspired you to pursue music?
Great question. A couple of major influences in my life that are responsible for me being here today. One of those would be my father, specifically, who had raised on a farm by a Danish immigrant, but he wanted his children each to have one instrument and one sport. Thought they'd be well developed. Didn't matter if they did it for a career, but he wanted them to develop skills and have the opportunities at having a sport and having an instrument. So I picked up the trumpet in third grade, started playing in community bands. And then when we moved from Olds, Alberta, population 3,000, to the big city of Red Deer, fourth largest city in the province at 27,000 people, I joined a community band there. And the second person who was influential in my life was the band director there, Mr. Connell, a retired Scottish trumpet player from the British Army bands. He came over and he told all of us when I was about 12, we're going to learn how to march, we're going to play concert music, we're going to grow this band, and in 4 years, we're going to take a tour for 3 weeks to England and Scotland. And we all went, no way. So we worked for 3 years of 4 years. And the last year we practiced 2 nights a week instead of 1 night a week. We learned to march, played in CFL football games, and got quite a reputation for that. And well, not in the games, in the halftime shows, let's be honest. And then what was really transformative to me was after my 10th grade year, we were about 10 days away from going on this trip that we'd worked so hard for 4 years. And Mr. Connell had a heart attack. And on that was Monday night. Tuesday, we found out 2 pieces of good news. One is that he wasn't going to die. He was going to survive. And number 2, he'd already found a former student of his who could conduct the band on our trip. And so we knew that the trip was going to go. But we did have a problem that on the Wednesday night, we had committed to play the opening show for the evening entertainment at the Red Deer County Fair, at the fairgrounds in the grandstand in front of 2,000 or 3,000 people. And that conductor couldn't get there in time to conduct the band. So from his hospital bed, Mr. Connell said, ask Keith Pedersen if he will conduct the band.
Wow.
And I was, to this day, I don't know why he picked me. I was just finishing my 10th grade year, so there were older people in the band. Maybe he thought, who's the one trumpet player I can do without, and picked me. I'm not sure. But so the next day, at 15, you do whatever you can to help the team. I stood in front of the 80-piece band with 2,000 people behind me. And you've ever seen that little cartoon about the conductor looking at the podium, and there's a piece of paper and it says, wave your hands until the music stops, turn around and bow?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I did. And the band knew the music so well, I just started and did a few retards and got them stopped and turned around and bowed. And when I hit that downbeat and an 80-piece band started playing, I thought, wow, this is pretty amazing.
Wow.
And so I decided when I came back, I told Mom and Dad I needed piano lessons because I wanted to be a conductor. And then the third person would be my high school music band and choir director, Ted Eisner, who helped me along the way. And then my senior year gave me an opportunity to be his assistant and conduct bands and choirs as a senior in high school. Taught me some theory along the way. And that's just given me a leg up all the way through my career.
That's great.
What about you?
That's a great story. Do you tell that story a lot?
Why do you ask?
Because I'm trying to I get asked this occasionally when you visit, you do recruiting or you visit high school students and they ask you questions like this. And so I feel like this, what I'm about to tell, I've told before. I can't remember if the people in the meeting have ever heard me talk about it, but Is that what you find that to be the case too?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do. And particularly for young people, I think it's important to
yeah,
remind them they have no idea what one day they're going to open a door or some opportunity is going to come their way,
yeah,
and it could literally change their life.
yeah,
But that only happens if you're in the game, if
yep,
you're doing something.
right.
But if you're doing something, you have no idea where you might be in 2 or 3 or 4 years. So, yeah, I do tell that story not infrequently.
No, that's great. I mean, that's how, there's that famous story of Leonard Bernstein. I mean, conducting the New York Philharmonic on a night when he was first conductor up
Yeah.
off the bench, like in Carnegie Hall.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's amazing to listen to, you know, I actually heard his son and daughter talk about that moment that on a podcast, as they had heard their dad talk about it. And
Wow.
that, I mean, he was already in the realm of all of that, but I mean, to have that opportunity, and like you to have that, I mean, this is the kind of thing we live for
Right.
as musicians now, and as we grow up and as we get experiences, like, yeah, call on me, man, I'll be there. If you want,
Yep.
we have an emergency conductor, tenor, soloist, you name it, we'll come, because we sort of are like, yeah, I'm up for that.
Yeah.
um I
Definitely.
was my first my I mean, it's hard to name just one or two people, but my family, my mom, my dad, my grandparents, particularly my grandfather, who is a professor of clarinet at Western Michigan University, and he played in the
Oh,
symphony orchestra in Kalamazoo. And my mom was a music educator. My dad was a junior high educator and football coach. So my grandfather was a teacher. So education, music, all in the family all the time. So our church experience in music got me singing as a young boy. And then when we reached fifth grade in Michigan, we got to choose an instrument, and if you wanted to play in the band. And I wanted, of course, to play the saxophone,
yes.
because just everybody go back to the 80s and listen to any rock band or anything kind of from the early 80s on, and it's all, from Bruce Springsteen to Huey Lewis to any of you hearing saxophone. So, but they were
Right.
out of saxophones, so I got a clarinet and played it in bands and loved it in elementary and middle school, and got to high school, and the band experience wasn't as great for me. And so I was about to just say, I don't think I'm gonna do this anymore. I'm gonna, put my attention towards sports and other things. And my girlfriend at the time was like, no, you should play in the orchestra. Why don't you play? You need a clarinet in the orchestra, and it's different. The orchestra director's different. And she played the trombone. And so I'm like, okay, great, let's do the orchestra. And I wound up joining the orchestra. And
Wow.
that was Jill, my wife. So she was like very influential at a moment where I was kind of like, I don't know, music.
Could have gone either way.
Could have gone either way on that. And so, yeah, I joined the orchestra, wound up singing in the musical and playing in a music. It was sort of, everything sort of opened up at once.
Mhm.
And so my family, my high school girlfriend and current wife, very influential. And then summer music camp experience at Western Michigan was a huge eye opener for me in terms of vocal music. It's like the chorus in that summer program made up of all these high school singers from all over Michigan, which is a very good high school choral tradition in Michigan. And so that summer chorus was really good. And Craig Arnold, who's the conductor of that choir and the director of choirs at Western Michigan at the time, was like, I'm like, wow, I like him a lot. He's very inspiring. And so I think he had a huge hand in saying, at a kind of a formative time in my life of like, well, you have to make a decision now what you're going to do if and where and when you go to college. What are you going to study? It's kind of like, yeah, I think I want to study with this guy, and I want to do this music thing and conduct a high school choir. That was kind of my
Right.
main goal. So that's like a condensed version of the story. And there's so many people along the way who helped influence me, and they would all overlap with either my family or my grandfather, as like all these music teachers that came along, whether it was the piano teacher or the elementary school band director, or both of the middle school band directors. I mean, all those, and chorus directors. I mean, they all knew everyone. And so it's a great network of influence, but those primary family based and why in, my Jill, the high school and then college ska band trombonists, like we were just like, that was a big part in keeping music in my life. And so I'm very grateful for all of them and that inspiration to bring that experience to other people. And for many years, around 10 years, I was doing that in a high school setting, and that was what I wanted to do. So
Yeah.
thank goodness for those moments that you have to kind of be ready for. Like,
Right.
Yeah, try that. That sounds good idea.
Yeah. Great story. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think the next question is mine to ask.
Sure.
What is the most important skill you learned in your development as a choral conductor?
Improvisation and flexibility. Deviating from the plan, that can be done on like so many levels, big, small, microscopic, but being able to, in fact, I was really trained well I feel like I got great training as a music educator, which then helped me plan rehearsals and read and develop processes for bringing scores to life with any range of ability of singers. But it all stems from, but the improvisation or the flexibility always comes from knowing there's a plan and then being comfortable moving away from it. I feel like
Right.
that's a learned, I don't know that I really learned how to do that until like maybe year one, when I was out of school and I was with groups all the time by myself. Like my mentor teachers weren't watching, my college professors weren't there. It was my job, and it was just me and the ensemble. And it was all of a sudden, okay, yeah, I planned this and they can't do it, or they did it already. Now what? You know what I mean? So I think that serves so many levels of this profession. You might have a professional group, then you start a program with them and you realize, wow, we actually can do more of this music, or we can do it this way, or what about this idea? And you're inspired to go further, or you begin with a ninth grade male chorus and you go, yeah, they can't sing, their range is this, or thought it was this, and we only have 9 of those. So you shift and make plans, long term or short term in small ways. I think that's a skill that we develop. It's hard to train it in, but it's good to talk about in upfront, because if you can follow a plan into a wall,
Yeah,
where you can
no
kind
doubt.
of be willing to take you where the group or where the music leads you, which is that's a more fun path, I think.
Well,
What
and
about you?
certainly the idea of flexibility has never been more important than over the last 2 years,
Oh,
when we've
God.
had to basically reinvent the way we've done just about everything.
Yeah, good point.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I hear you on that.
What about you?
Well, I'm not sure it's a skill, and I'm not sure I've really learned it all yet. But I think the first thing that came to my mind is this understanding that, quite apart from your technique and what you learn about music theory and music history and vocals technique and all of that, is the reminder that when I'm conducting human beings. I'm not conducting music, and I'm working with human beings. That's the instrument I'm working with. And I can have whatever degree I have and all the background I have, but if I can't bring it alive for the people who are sitting in front of me, it doesn't really matter. And if I can't learn how to treat those people with the respect they deserve so that they want to make good music with me, instead of feeling like they have to make good music with me, then again, the spark and the joy of the music making and the together experience, the communal experience of that, is lost and gone. And I learned that pretty quickly my first 2 or 3 years at the college level, when I just came and I thought, I've got a doctor's degree, and so all I have to do is tell them I have a doctor's degree in choral conducting, and you're gonna do what I said because you know that I know best. And realized very quickly that every day is a selling job to a certain degree. I'm convincing them that this is going to be worthwhile and meaningful, and building up rapport and what's what I'm looking for, a sense of connections and trust, a mutual trust there. And then about the time you do it, they graduate, and you've got to do it with the next group as they're coming along.
Yeah.
So just trying to be sensitive to the people in front of me, where they are in their own musical development at large, what our purpose is as a particular ensemble, how we're feeling that particular night, and recognizing that my job is to bring joy into their life through music and our rehearsal process, and then everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think sometimes the inspiration of the singer or of the group is just as effective, sort of indirectly getting them to respond and sing in the way that you are hoping for, then going back to the same musical, focusing on the musical details that you'll hear that you want to fix or make better. You can go right after those, or you can, as you're saying, you can kind of bank some of the goodwill and connection that you have, or creating an environment where singers can be vulnerable, and that indirectly they're going to give, if you ask for, or if you look for an inspirational way or creative way, non-musical, non-technical, to get the volume higher, or get the sound to be beefier, or get the phrase to be more connected. You don't have to say those things I just said. You are going in a different route. You're talking to people. You're talking about the people that wrote the music, or something like that, that human connection to notes and rhythms and stuff and technique, that we're all connected by that spirit of wanting to communicate something. So by talking and creating that, by doing that, you create like an authentic, indirect way to get them to sing better. Like they sing better when they actually want to sing.
Yep.
What a crazy concept.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. I think, is this me? I think this is me.
No, I think this is me.
Okay.
So what is your secret non-music passion?
Oh, probably photography is that's like a hobby passion, I would say. But yeah, that's been something, also sort of family, driven, as my grandfather had a dark room and had all kinds of cameras, and back when there was film, he taught us how to develop it. It took classes in black and white photography and in color photography, back when you printed like with chemicals and stuff. And I had a dark
back
room
in the good old days.
Back in the good old days. And it's kind of cool because it's there's been something of a revival. I mean, this is my house, so I can grab stuff. This is my grandfather's Rolleiflex camera. So it's
awesome.
It's a twin lens camera. So the bottom lens goes to the film and the top lens goes to the viewer, right? So you look down like this. And so early pandemic times, it was like, let's load it up. It takes big film. Let's load it up and go for a walk. And so me and Parker were walking around, and we took a bunch of pictures with this, and they turned out pretty good. I have a really great one of him. So
how old is that camera? Is it from the 50s?
That's a great question. I would say, 40s, 50s. I'd have to look for sure. It's in really good shape.
Wow.
I've kind of investigated. There's a couple of places that like refurbish these, because there's the stuff peels off. I mean, but it's a German-made Rolleiflex camera. It has a light meter that still works amazingly, and it's in really good condition. So if there's time, I could put on music, open up the library of the billion pictures that I have still yet to really look at or go through, and log or print or whatever. It's just that's been kind of even in the pandemic, as we've had to find time to do things to keep ourselves busy, to not go crazy. Maybe a couple of years ago, I'm thinking of that was there. So that's one thing for me. Yep. What about you?
Good. Well, I've already alluded to it. It's probably not so secret for those people around me for very long, but I have a fascination with military history, and particularly Second World War history. I was living on a farm for 4 or 5 weeks when I was in 6th grade. My parents had gone to take an extended vacation, and a member of the church took my brother and I in. And so I had a 20-mile ride into school every day. And I made a new friend who had these little metal planes from the Battle of Britain. And up to that point, I was reading outdoors and westerns and horse stories and those kinds of things. But then I got all fascinated about these little planes, and you're doing this on the back seat because you're bored for 35, 45 minutes as you're driving. And I started reading about World War, first of all, the Battle of Britain, and then it expanded from there. And I've been reading World War II history ever since.
Wow, cool. Yeah, my grandfather flew a airplane in World War II.
Wow.
They flew these. They hit. I forget the name of the aircraft, but he was the term they called his. They were they were Army. It was pre-Air Force, right? So they were, but they were flying missions. They were carpetbaggers, they called them. So if you Google that in World War II, you'll find the groups that were doing those kind of missions. And they only flew at night, and they painted the bottom of the airplanes black, so you couldn't tell really. You weren't supposed to be able to see them, and they would go and they would drop supplies and stuff to troops on the ground and things like that. I'm pretty sure I've got that right. I have to check all my facts, but that was how they would fly, kind of clandestine stuff, and
behind enemy lines. And wow, fascinating. And okay. I think it's your turn.
My turn. What is your favorite memory of a performance?
So many by this time in my career. So many. When I remember one when we were in Worcester Cathedral, which is where my family is from, that neck of the woods, and Bad King John was buried behind us. And I had done this beautiful piece where one of my sopranos has this high soaring line, kind of like Eric Whitacre will have you do in Luke Sarunque or something like this. And she'd always done a beautiful job with it, but I didn't tell her what it was going to be like when you did it in a cathedral. And she got to that point, and she floated the high G, and then she heard her voice coming back, and her eyes went wide, and I thought she was going to stop singing. And she said that moment changed her life, and she went on to sing with Sacra Profana and doing some other professional singing afterwards. So that's great. That's a favorite moment. I will tell you, I think one of my favorite moments was in probably, and I have to say this carefully, but it was probably the worst choir I ever directed. Because when I first got out to California after my doctor's degree, I was offered halfway through the year the opportunity to resurrect the choir program at Oxnard Community College after 5 years of no choirs. And I had to recruit this choir from living 50 miles away in the San Fernando Valley. And I was told that I would take everybody. And so I did. I ended up with 16 or 18 people, and I pulled out junior high music. We were doing 2- and 3-part music. Those try to be fun, teach them how to read some music, and give them some experience in the joy of music making. One of the young men who was singing with me had been in a car accident, and he had was in a wheelchair permanently, had a tracheotomy for 6 months, so his voice wasn't great. He was missing an arm. And at the end of one of the pieces, we didn't choreograph this or anything, but we had the big showstopper ending. And I can still remember him halfway pushing his way out of the wheelchair and lifting what was left of one of his arms up with the big gesture for the cutoff at the close of this piece. And I thought, wow, this is a young man who has a hard, long life ahead of him. And for this one moment, this choir, this college choir that was singing junior high music, was a great event for him.
Yeah.
And in that same performance was a middle-aged guy who had joined the choir 3 weeks into the semester, had dropped his history class because he heard us rehearsing, and he said, "This sounds a lot more interesting. I think I'll take your class." And the week before, we only rehearse once a week, the week before the concert, he was there when I got there, waiting, pacing for me. And I said, "Oh, nice to see you here tonight." He said, "Yeah, I got to tell you, I have to miss out rehearsal tonight." And I'm thinking, of course, yeah, our penultimate rehearsal, you're going to skip out on me? Why are you doing that? I didn't say that, thank goodness. I said, "Oh, really? What's up?" And he said, "Well, my son has just been shot, and I need to go to the hospital 2 hours away."
Oh my God.
And of course, everything changes. Your perspective of everything changes at that moment. And I said, "Do you need me to drive you there? Are you going to be okay?" And he said, "No, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I'll see you next week." So the next week we came, it was our last rehearsal before the concert, and I'm just focused on the music, and go, getting all the details done and who's supposed to stand where. And he was there, a little subdued, but he was there putting his effort into it. And at the end of the night, he kind of hung around and everybody left away. And I finally turned to him and said, "I'm sorry, I haven't even had a chance to ask, how is your son?" And he said, "I buried him on Monday."
Oh my God.
And I thought, oh, you don't have to be here. Thank you very much for coming, but you don't have to be here. This is an incredible time in your life. And if you need to be somewhere else, that's fine. And he said, "No, I've been working hard for this. And this is something that's bright and positive for me in my life right now." And I still get emotional when I think about the fact that this worst choir that I've ever conducted could be a place of joy and meaning and fulfillment and reward for people in disparate parts of their lives. And it reminds me again of the importance of choral music, the importance of singing together, and what it can do for individuals as well as a community.
That's great.
So it may not be the most polished performance that we ever gave, but it is definitely one I will never forget.
No, that's a great answer. It reminds me of where we, how we first found our way to this platform in choral music, this Zoom platform. And while, I will never forget those sessions with either with the San Diego Master Chorale or the Palomar choirs. And I'm like, what are you all doing here? What are you doing here? How are there 70 people in this rehearsal right now?
Right.
We're on a camera. And, but to what, like, as you just said, there's more to the music. There's more than music to this kind of music making, and the community that you build and the relationships that you build and the personalities that you connect with are a huge part of it. I mean, the personalities and that are what got me into the profession to begin with. And to sort of, for you to say,
right,
what you've said about the quality of the singing, well, that's secondary to what's really important. Because what wound up being really important 2 years ago was being together in any possible way. We couldn't even hear each other, and didn't matter. There was no music making. There was only the meeting,
Yeah, the community.
The community.
Yeah.
My
favorite memory of a performance?
Well, I have. It's hard to find. Like you said, it's kind of hard to pick one. I'll say probably two. I'll say so. One is one of the collaborative choral orchestral concerts that we did in New York. I taught it at LaGuardia School in New York City. That's an arts high school. They made a movie about it called Fame. Actually, they did 2 movies called Fame about LaGuardia. And LaGuardia High School is not by the airport. It's actually right behind Lincoln Center. It's certainly not a building that's anywhere near as refined as Lincoln Center. It kind of looks just like a big box on Amsterdam and 65th and Amsterdam. But every year we would do 2 concerts of choral orchestral music with the senior chorus and the senior orchestra. And one year we collaborated with the orchestra. Actually, we collaborated with the orchestra of St. Luke's on several educational programs. One year we did this with a composer element. So a New York-based composer wrote a piece that was for the educational concerts, where the LaGuardia choir would sing, the chamber orchestra from St. Luke's were going to play, and the other half of the program included the original orchestration of Appalachian Spring. So he orchestrated this piece for the same orchestra. And I said, I'd like to do that at the high school too, like for our last concert in June. And why don't we, the texts were Petrarch sonnets, and they were all in these Baroque dance forms. And let's involve the dance studio, which was on the top floor of the high school with the best windows and the best view of at the time, it was the best view of the Hudson River. And I think they probably still have that. And so we collaborated on this wonderful program, and the composer was there. He was wonderful with students. And we had this just immersive overlapping experience with creating this piece, working on it with the singers and the players and the dancers. And that was really cool. Of several moments. The other was the first concert that I ever prepared the San Diego Master Chorale for with the San Diego Symphony.
Right.
So this is memorable for obviously lots of reasons. One is my first experience getting to work with Maestro Ling.
Right.
My first experience, preparing the chorus for the symphony, and that was a big deal for me. And it was the Haydn Mass in Time of War.
Right.
And we get everything's, we get the rehearsals are good. We get to the first performance. It's wonderful. It sounds great. I'm home the morning after the first concert. We did 3 concerts. The morning of the second concert, I get a phone call from the director of artistic planning for the symphony at the time. And he says, "Hey, nice job. The choir sounded great last night." I'm like, "Thanks for calling. What's going on?" He says, "You're a tenor, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, so the tenor soloist got sick. So that second and third concerts, I stepped in and sang the tenor solos in the quartet. It's not a big part, but it was like, that's the kind of moment that we were just talking about. Like,
Yeah.
okay, here you go. Prove it. Prove it, Russell. So
Wow.
we just went and did that. And so the chorus that I helped prepare is behind me, along with the orchestra. Ya Ling is here, and we're just like, here we go.
And you're
So
doing professional music on a professional stage with
Copley
one of the
Hall,
great conductors.
So that was probably one of my most memorable moments in San Diego music, for sure.
Yeah, it would have to be. It would have to be. That's an amazing story. That's great. What's next?
I think you're next.
What trends and challenges do you anticipate for the choral art in the next 5 years?
I could speak personally of that. I mean, for the college, it's just getting the singers back, I think we had several singers that, for good reason, were not interested in doing an online choir.
Yep.
And now some of them are back, like they've come back to engage in music making at the college, and some who are like, I'm not ready to come back yet for safety. We're just waiting still. We're like, that's what we do now. We just wait.
Yep.
And so I think for me personally, and especially at Palomar, we are, working to recruit singers back into the program, get them re-engaged in music making. And the ones that are there are doing that. We just had the floor drop out. So I think that's one piece. I think the other piece is that finally people are becoming more sensitive to choosing music that represents a broader base of influence, voices, historical, cultural backgrounds, in a way that allows not just the audience to hear different music. No, the point is, especially in an educational institution, the students themselves get to experience music of cultures, music of experiences, and maybe composers that are rarely heard as part of their full experience in the college choir. And then of course, at the professional level, we want to see the same thing with the symphony and with the master chorale. So my challenge, and I feel strongly about, I don't want to make a thing of that. I just want to do it. I find like that. I'm sure you feel the same way when you have time to either quietly study a score or quietly look for the next program piece that's going to fit into whatever you're doing next. That's the joyful part of the work, is like that, having the quiet time to go, oh, look at this person's list of compositions by African-American composers that have rarely been done, and for whatever reason. Right. Or Madalena Casulana's madrigals, like a woman composing madrigals in the Renaissance period. What? Yeah. Well, let's talk about that, and let's sing some of those, and let's record some of those, or whatever. Right. Fine. But so I find that probably in the next 5 years, I feel like that's going to happen more. It already is happening, but I think that trend is the best thing that can happen to our music making, because it just, I don't know how you are. I love learning about, hearing about new music. Like, I can't get enough of it. If it's choral music, if it's popular music, if it's whatever, I want to hear it. I want to know about it. I want to know why people like it. I want to know why people didn't like it or have never heard it. I want to know all that stuff. So to allow that, to let that find its way into our programming is essential. I don't think we do the best job of that kind of teaching, regardless of whether you're programming a variety of backgrounds or underrepresented composers. The college level, we don't always do the best job in going, okay, pretend for a minute you have the best choir you can imagine. What music are you going to do and why? Like
Right.
nobody ever asked me that question. I don't think in any of my undergraduate or graduate school, maybe once. I
Yeah.
was like, pretend you're going to take a chorus to the ACDA convention. What are you going to do? What music are you going to choose? Oh my God, I don't know. How do I pick? I'm used to picking music that the boys, the men's choir can sing this, the freshman choir can sing this, the concert choir has this much ability, and we have 2 tenors, so we can do this thing. Like everything was programmed like as a puzzle that fit the group.
Right.
Not just like think about the scope of choral music or all music
That's
for all
out there.
time. What do you want to do? What do you like? What are you interested in? Like
Yeah.
go with that. So I hope that this trend toward finding more diverse programming finds its way into graduate programs and other things too. It's like, let's talk about why you pick the music you pick, because it isn't just because it's on the JW Pepper list or whatever. It's because
Right.
you found this composer or you met this person or you went to, so that's what I think is happening, and I can hope continues to happen, in the next 5 years.
No, I hear you. I was talking to a high school music teacher last week, and we're talking about some of the challenges coming out of COVID, and the pressures that we're under when we're trying to recruit in high schools for choirs. And she was talking about this new requirement that's going to be for high school students in California for this cultural, I don't remember the exact term, but this cultural awareness course. This that opens our eyes to the different cultures that we have and different views and voices. And she was saying, I wish we could get kids in choir credit for that, because we've been doing that for 10 years.
Yeah.
In my choirs, we haven't been just talking about it. We've been doing it. We've been doing music from South America, Latin America, from Asia, from Africa, from Central European, Western European, in different parts of the United States, African American experience. And so we actually enter it and we do it, and we make that happen. And that is so important. I had a chance to see Cornell West at the university at the Writer
wow.
Symposium by the Sea
Yes, I
on
was here.
Friday night. And it was mind-blowing. The man must have dropped 50 to 80 names and put them all in context in the course of his conversation. I knew about 80% of them, and he knew details about every one of them to put them together in his conversation that they were having. And the sentences he would come out on the fly, any one of them I'd have been happy to have written with 3 or 4 hours of preparation. Brilliant man. But his heart was really into this idea of recognizing that everybody sees different things or the same thing differently, or we have different views of the world. And how do we come to accept each other even if we have different views? And because of his religious background and convictions, he felt that was what he was basically called to do, is to help other people see differences rather than as a threat, to see them as something that can be, celebrated, and to honor and love each other in spite of our differences. And boy, don't we need that in our world today, on the macro level, on the national level, and just when we're talking to people who we've known for a long time, who have maybe a different political view than we do. So I think what you're saying is so important, and choral music can give us that, both that excuse to explore different cultures by interacting with the music itself of that culture, and to do it linking arms with somebody next to me who may come from a different socioeconomic background, different racial background, different cultural background, and now we're on the same team. And now maybe I can listen to his point of view or her point of view that's different than mine, but we're friends, we're working together on the same team, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and listen to them. I think choral music can be a way forward through some of the challenges of the multicultural environment we find ourselves in these days. And I also agree with you, boy, calling singers back to the rehearsal room when they've forgotten the joy We're asking them to do hard work. We're asking
Right.
them to give up another night in front of Netflix or whatever video game it is that's so exciting and all their friends are doing. We're asking them to get involved in a very different way, to take risks with singing wrong notes and maybe not singing with great tone quality, and to remind them of the joys of choral music and exposing to them that performance opportunity. That's the challenge, I think, because there's a whole generation of students who got put on the sidelines over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's going
Yeah.
to take us a long time for that to work through the whole system.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm glad you're saying that. I just have to tell myself to be patient and
Yep.
do that. We all know the work we need to do. It's going to take time.
Yep. And
I
just
think,
we'll work with the people who are in front of us and be happy for that and
yeah.
say, okay, what's the best what's the best we can do together in this group, as you were saying.
Yeah. And I think that the groups themselves offer the opportunity to recognize there's lots of ways to represent diversity.
Yeah.
Certainly a chorus, and I think about this definitely with the master chorale being a choir that's made up of adult singers, almost all of whom have jobs that unrelated to music.
Yeah.
Some do. That, well, were it not for the San Diego Master Chorale, they may never ever have been in the same room together. They may never have talked. They may never have interacted, but they all share this passion for singing. And I think that's like probably one of the, well, that goes back to the idea of community in the room or in the meeting, as we had when we only could meet on Zoom. That becomes the most important thing. And I think I share that a lot with audiences too, and our patrons of the Master Chorale and the audiences at Palomar too, just to say that being involved in this kind of music making, it's especially, I mean, the community college is community college for a reason. And at Palomar, we invite the same interaction, the diversity of backgrounds and experiences happen in the Palomar Chorale because the community members come to campus to participate in that. And they bring a different perspective than the student who's there to finish a 2-year, 4-semester transfer degree and go on and do something beyond Palomar. So we're inviting this mix and this diversity of backgrounds into the ensembles as well as with the repertoire. And I think that's a vital aspect of what we're doing.
Certainly is.
Not seeing another question there, so I don't know. A final question. Okay. Is this mine? Sorry, I forgot.
I think that is yours.
Okay. So this is the final question. Where can we find you and your choirs? Websites, upcoming performances, etc.
Well, thank you for that question. Yes, if you go to Point Loma Nazarene University and our music department, you'll find upcoming performances of the Point Loma Singers and our choral union. We are, getting ready for our madrigal dinner for the chamber choir, the madrigal dinner, and April 1 and 2. We do have a homecoming concert after the first week. I guess it's about the 18th of March, more of a concert performance. And then the church choir, of course, you can find us at La Jolla Presbyterian Church. Find out what we're doing there. I'm really excited because in June we're going to do a concert with orchestra, COVID willing,
Great.
permitting, with Dan Forrest's relatively new work, Requiem for the Living,
Wonderful.
which is a beautiful, beautiful piece, very accessible to an audience, but challenging to the choir, and just gorgeous moment after gorgeous moment. If you know the music of Dan, if you don't know the music of Dan Forrest, it's amazing. I would also say our choral union just started rehearsals last night. We're going to do Mendelssohn's Elijah, or at least portions of it, coming up in April the 24th. So if you want to come to the concert, love to have you there. If you want to join us and it doesn't take you away from your current choir responsibilities, we'd be happy to have you join us on Monday nights.
Fabulous.
What about you? What are you up to?
So you can find information about the Palomar choruses and all the Palomar performances at palomarperforms.com. I put that, I don't know, it's not a live hyperlink in the chat there. We're singing Sean Kirshner, a couple of groups are doing Sean Kirshner's Songs of Ascent again. So the Palomar choirs are singing with us Palomar Symphony in April. That's kind of our next Palomar chorus event. And then the Master Chorale has our annual high school honor choir is April 16 at First United Methodist Church. And so the full chorale will be there, as well as a group of high school singers that will be learning and working with me a few select pieces by themselves. And then we'll sing some things together, April 16. That is actually, that event, amazingly, I think this is our sixth one. I think, sixth, was not interrupted by COVID, by just these kind of quirky circumstances. As the 2020 honor choir was in February, and we got it in just before things were closed down. And then in 2021, last year, we pushed it a little later, and we were able to do it outside. So we had a 2020 and a 2021 honor choir. We're very proud of that. So that's April 16. And then the Master Chorale will perform Songs of Ascent, Sean Kirshner's Songs of Ascent, in May at the First Presbyterian Church downtown San Diego.
Great.
May 10, I think. And then we will sing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony with the San Diego Symphony out at the Shell at the end of May with Rafael Payare. We're looking forward to that. That was that. And then, and we're doing Mozart Requiem with the mainly Mozart Orchestra out at their outdoor venue in Del Mar in June. So there's a bunch of stuff coming up for multiple groups, and please join us. Please join Keith's choir, join your church choir, wherever you were singing, go back and re-engage when and if you're comfortable. We'd love to see you all at a concert, or see you in the choirs around San Diego.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. This has been a real treat. We've loved having you on. We can have everyone kind of come back off camera and or on camera, I should say, come say hi. I wanted to do one last final announcement that San Diego Sings Festival is coming on April 2nd, is a Saturday. So be sure to get your ticket. It's at the new Conrad venue in La Jolla. So very nice venue, some really amazing community choirs. So the link is in the chat there as well, if you can join us. And with that, I think we can turn off the recording and have people show their appreciation and drop and say hi and goodbye. And we'll see you guys at the next one.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, John.